Both the ITAR and the EAR control the export of physical things, of course. We've already seen some examples of physical things that these regs control. But it's not just physical things that these export regulations control. The regulations also control certain kinds of information. In this video, we'll explain the different kinds of physical things and information that the ITAR and the EAR control. First, let's look at the different kinds of physical things. Under both the ITAR and the EAR, physical things are often referred to as commodities. So that's the term that we'll use when discussing physical things. Usually, the first thing that springs to mind when we discuss a commodity is what we will call an end item. An end item is a complete product that is ready for its intended use. For example, a fully functioning satellite is an end item. In addition to end items, the export regulations will also control parts, components, attachments, accessories, and other things that make up the end item. You might be asking, isn't this overkill? Why is the government so strict in controlling all of these things? If I just want to export some little part of a CubeSat to someone in another country, why would the US government care about that? Well, here is why. Imagine that I have a satellite. Depending on the characteristics of my satellite, it might be subject to either the ITAR or the EAR, but that's not important right now. Imagine that I want to export my satellite to the Venezuelan military. Well, regardless of whether we're talking ITAR or EAR, the US government is going to require me to get a license before doing this, and frankly, I know that they're going to reject my license application because the US isn't on great terms with Venezuela right now. So instead of exporting the entire satellite all at once, I get the clever idea to break it down into its individual parts, and I send it one part at a time. And I also send them assembly instructions. Now, obviously, if I were able to do this, there would be a pretty massive loophole in the regulations. So as a result, the ITAR and the EAR control not just end items, but also parts, accessories, and other elements of those end items. Oh yeah, and those assembly instructions that we just mentioned, those are controlled too. We mentioned previously that the ITAR and EAR control not just physical things, but also information. Instructions on how to build a commodity are one such type of information. The ITAR refer to this information as technical data, and the EAR refer to it as technology. Throughout the video, we're just going to stick with the word technology, regardless of whether we're talking about ITAR-controlled stuff or EAR-controlled stuff. So technology is any information that is necessary to do certain things with commodities, such as development, production, operation, installation, or repair of those commodities. Now, there are many different forms that this information can take. For example, it could be communicated in writing or even orally. It could be in blueprints, it could be in drawings, photographs, operating manuals. The information could even possibly be passed just through visual inspection of the commodity under the right circumstances. Okay, so we've covered one category of information that is controlled by the ITAR and the EAR, specifically technology, which is information that is necessary to operate my satellite, build my satellite, or do similar things. But there's one other category of information that we need to talk about that's necessary for me to actually operate my satellite. Once my satellite is in orbit, I want to send signals to it from my computer to control the satellite's movements and also to gather information from the satellite. Naturally, in order to do this, I'm going to need software on both my computer and on the satellite. Software is that second type of information that the ITAR and EAR control. Broadly speaking, there are two categories of software that the export regulations discuss. These are source code and object code. Source code is a language that computer programmers can read and write. Here's an example of source code. Now, although this might look like gibberish to most people, a computer programmer who is trained in this particular language will understand what it says. Once a programmer finishes writing source code, the source code is put through something called a compiler, which then translates the source code into object code. Unlike source code, a programmer won't be able to read and write object code. The export regulations do sometimes treat source code and object code differently, so just keep these concepts in mind when you see regulations relating to software. Okay, that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one.